Today, we are starting for the chapter 3, methodology. Before we start to talk about methodology from the book, I would like to mention something that is very, very important. Everything we do, not only on the Spiritism, but in our lives, if we establish a method, it will be way easier to us to cope with, to learn, and even better, to pass to others. I have particular care about methodology, especially when we're talking about mediumship. Because mediumship is not something that we do when we don't have anything else to do. It's not like that. Should not be like that. When we committed ourselves to be a medium, participate in mediumship meetings, or any other activity related to mediumship, it becomes like an obligation. It's not something that we do when we have nothing else to do. It becomes the priority number one, at least at that particular moment that we're supposed to dedicate ourselves to that activity. We see quite often people that don't take that seriously, and they make their own life more complicated with mediumship, especially from the beginning, when we start to know a little bit better our mediumship, how to handle, how to do it. If we come once, disappear 3 weeks, come back another one, disappear another month, that is not commitment. That is someone that has nothing else to do and then decide to give that time to mediumship. So as we all here, I believe we are committed to this principle that mediumship is serious, and whenever I have a chance to put that in practice, I will be someone committed to that, because that will bring you what most of people looking after when they talk about mediumship. A lot of mediums and a lot of people, when they try to learn about mediumship, is because they're trying to get a benefactor to help them better, to be with them all the time. And the only way to ensure that we'll have better spirits around us is if we show our commitment to the cause, if you like. If we are responsible with things we agreed to participate, things we agreed to do, even before our incarnation. That's the only way I know that I can kind of guarantee that I'll have higher spirits close to me. Otherwise, it ain't going to happen. Now we're starting our book, Medium's book, chapter 3, methodology. One very natural and praiseworthy desire that others have, and which should always be encouraged, is that of winning converts. To make the task easier, we now intend to examine what we believe are the surest means to realize this objective without wasting any useless effort. Let's carry on a little bit more and then we talk about it. We have stated that Spiritism is a complete science, an entire philosophy in and of itself. Those who would desire to become thoroughly familiar with it must first of all submit to a serious study of the subject and become persuaded that more than any other science, it cannot be learned without commitment. Funny enough, he's already started using that word that I spoke a few minutes ago. So let's stop here, otherwise it will be too much to remember and I will forget. I'm getting old. And first thing, right? What he means winning converts. I will leave that open so you can make your own idea based in what we discussed before and what we'll see from now on. But remember, what is the best way to convince people? what's the best way to convert people to anything we would like to. Does anyone have any idea which one would be the best way to convince people?
I think one way to convince people is by the way you treat them and the way you operate in the world, so that you're a kind of a living example, and that can be a very good way.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. So brilliant. And to make that sentence shorter, by example. Our examples are the most powerful tool we have. Our example is something that is like our business card. This business card can be seen anytime, any moment in our lives, not only by those spirits incarnated that we are, but also by these spirits that discarnated, that most of us we don't see. So we need to be very careful with our business card, because that opens doors or does exactly the opposite. So let's always think about that. I'm not sure if I spoke about that here, but to us that we have kids, sometimes they are 3-4 years old, and we see them repeating everything we do. The way we eat, the way we open a door, the way we sit, crossing the legs and things like that. They repeat ourselves in gestures, actions, and as a consequence, with choices. So example is one very powerful tool we have. Carrying on a little bit, he mentioned again science, spiritism and science. And we spoke about that last week. So at that time, philosophy, natural philosophy was a science, was considered a science. Spiritualism, there was, let's say, a branch connected to the spiritism, was considered science. Only later in history that was splitted. But the phenomena is there, the way to study is there, and this is science. Remembering that science is a law or is an art of observation, if you like. And here we go again. Cannot be learned without commitment. Guys, we are having a time here. We are studying together. We can share thoughts, questions, and everything like that. Christine, please.
Yeah, sorry, Gil. I can't seem to get my hand to go up, so I'm putting my hand up. I just wanted to say, where we say it's a complete science, there would be those that would argue or debate the point, not argue, I don't like to use that word, debate the point that how can you say it's a complete science when, and these are people that don't understand anything about spiritism, when other religions, there's more information on other religions. I'm relating this to basically my experience in Australia, because I don't know about other countries. So what would be a way to, I mean, I know Kardec was a scientist, and I've seen the Kardec film, how it all started, the burning of the books, etc. But how would you suggest that if someone said, well, you know, how can you call it a complete science, and, you know, in relation to other religions, how would you, not trying to convince them, but sort of get them to think about it, that it's different. It's not a religion as such, it's a science.
Great question. Very, very good question. Yasmin, let me just try to answer that question and I'll come to you, okay? First of all, we need to move to the past. Now we are on the 1800s, mid 1800s. At that time in history, spiritualism was well connected as a philosophy to psychology of the human nature. It was recognized as a science at the time. No one at that time would make that question because there was well understood, studied by universities like Sorbonne, for example, as a science. That period in history, it was clearly a science, accepted by everyone. Later in history, they start to argue and they split spiritualism from the other part of the assembly that becomes psychology and a few other things that we know today. That we start from there, okay? I like to explain to people when they ask me that, something that in my eyes are very simple. What is science? Science is an art of observation. And science based everything in observation from day one. When people identified that the Earth was not flat, when they identified gravity, and bring more to the recent time, when they start to call themselves scientists, because before they were not called scientists. But science itself, from all the time, is an art of observation. Initially, we observe only with our eyes. I observed one fact 1, 2, 3 times, and then using reason, I start to create a theory based on what my eyes were able to observe, and then become something that I was able to reproduce and to identify. This is science, an art of observation. Nowadays, how do we do that? We still use the same principle. It's an art of observation. But today, we observe using instruments, powerful instruments, microscopes, satellites, you name it. Today, science is booming with lots of equipment. But the equipment itself is useless if you still don't have your pair of eyes to observe the results that have been brought to you by the machine. Perhaps in the future, perhaps in the future, with AI, artificial intelligence, things may be a bit different and the instruments will bring something ready for you. But at the present, as far as I know, we still need to observe the results of an instrument, the results from experience in a lab, and that is science. Saying that, Spiritism observes everything around them. In the mediumship meeting, for example, the indoctrinators, they have to observe the energy of the place, the attitude of the mediums, the vibration of the place, how things are processed. If we're talking about a mediumship meeting where we have materialization, how that is happening, if we have rules to prevent something fake, charlatanism. So it is an art of observation. So in my eyes, this is science. And that's the way I try to explain to people when they ask me. Okay? Does it make sense for you, Christine?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Yasmin, where are you? I cannot see you anymore.
Yes, that's because I was going to say the same thing as you. We forget about the definition of science, and mainly it's the same for religion and a lot of things like that. And before talking about the subject, we should go back to the definition of that thing and then debate about that subject. But
Very good.
You say it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Someone to give me another score. Very good. So coming back to that word that I would like that we all keep in our minds is commitment. Mediumship, as per Spiritism instructions, is never to be related to money. We receive for free, we give for free. Spiritism, as per we know, use mediumship to practice charity. Is one of the ways to do charity. And that's the main goal of mediumship or mediumship meetings. And we should have that in mind. Without commitment, true commitment to learn, to practice, to help others, is how we achieve a balance. And sometimes, even in our lives, not only without mediumship, because one thing is close to another. So keep that word in your hearts, because I think it's one of the most important for a medium. As we started earlier, Spiritism applies to all the issues that interest humankind. And that's true. If you have an opportunity, open a Spiritist book, check the amount of questions about everything in life that's there. It's very possible that you find an answer of something you may be looking for. It is an immense field, and we must, above all, consider it as to its consequence. Its foundation undoubtedly consists in the belief of spirits. I think that by now we passed that limit, right? If we all here, means that we believe in spirits. If we still do not believe in spirits, you're not believing in yourselves. But such belief does not make a knowledgeable spiritist any more than a belief in God makes a theologian. I think it's that I can make a difference now here. Comment something here. What is the difference? What is the difference between believe and know? When someone asks me, do you believe in spirits? I will answer, no, I don't believe in spirits. I know they exist. It's a bit different, because when we believe in something, we're still not there yet. I believe I'll be old one day. I believe something is there. I believe. I passed that long ago. I know they exist. I know they are around me. And how is that possible to know something like that? First, if you don't have any mediumship, like I was trying to think, Munir, about a different word, but I cannot find ostensive mediumship. Because I was talking to Munir the other day about that word. So if you don't have an ostensive mediumship, how do I know they exist? Practicing our reason. So Spiritism will bring so many ways to understand and to learn what are the spirits that we will know. We don't need to see, to hear, or to talk to them to know they exist. But if I'm one of them, like that needs to see, there are many ways I can have exposure to the spirit world by intuition, by energy, by dreams, by many other ways if you don't participate in a mediumship meeting. But if you do participate in any mediumship meeting, there's only one thing I can tell you. If we don't believe, means that everyone that's in that particular room having that meeting have a serious problem, because he speaks different language. He does not know how to speak. He writes things in a different way than he writes when he is not under the influence over a spirit. So you tell me, what is that? Is the person mad? Is he getting crazy? Because if that's the case, we have lots of people in a lot of mediumship meetings that they are reproducing the same phenomena. If that's not a spirit behind that, you tell me what it is. And perhaps we have all of us, we have to go to find a doctor to find what is the real cause of it. So it depends on what we want. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Guilherme. I think, to move from faith to knowledge is a scientific process, because faith is the starting point. Oh, I believe this is true. But when you say, I know it's true, because you have enough evidence, whatever evidence, from logic, from experiments, from your, experiences there, as you said, from watching mediums and analyzing that. But we have to be rational in this process. To move from faith, as the starting point is the thesis. I believe this is true. Okay, now I have to prove, or I have evidence enough to prove that yes, then I believe. Then I know, sorry. Then I know, I get to the point where I can say that. Yeah. But we have to have these things in mind.
Munir, something came to my mind when you were talking, like, if you guys don't believe in spirits, why are you listening to me? Because if you don't, I'm telling you all, I know they exist. If you don't know either, if you don't believe, you all are listening to someone that needs to go to a hospital. And some of you are listening to the same guy for a couple of weeks. So we have a problem here. So I think that it's fair to say that we all believe in spirits by now, right? Hi, Christine.
Hi, I was in a Spiritist meeting the other night, and we always start off with a reading from the Gospel, and we're asked, someone give me a number between 1 and 500. And at the same time, myself and another member said the same number at the same time. So I believe that was, well, I think I know that was meant to be, because that reading of the Gospel, the number that we gave, was relevant to the subject that we were studying that night.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you one thing. There is no thing called coincidence, especially when you are, like you said, preparing to study one serious subject like gospel or any other subject on the spiritism. Sometimes you open the book, any page, any moment, without even thinking about that before. And it's exactly what we need for that particular meeting, or is exactly what we need for that particular person, is what he or she needs to hear. And that is driven by them. There's no coincidence. And quite often, even online, when we are doing a study, we open a book, we read one test. When you open the other book, it's exactly the continuation of the same subject. Sometimes even go on to the whole night. So yeah, it's very common, very normal. So this is something that comes from where? Now that you almost know, it's coming from them. Very good. Thus, let us see what might be the most suitable way to proceed in its teachings in order to most effectively bring about conviction. Adherents need not to be frightened by the world teaching. It is not solely the product of the lecture, stand or podium. but it also occurs in a simple conversation. Every person who tries to persuade another by means of explanation or experiences teaches. What we want is for the teaching efforts to produce results, and what is why we believe our task should be that of providing a few words of advice that may be equally beneficial to those who want to learn by themselves. They will find the means herein to most surely and quickly reach their goal. So he's now telling us that in this book, we may find a path, a safe path to learn and to understand mediumship. He mentioned here that we can learn by ourselves. That's true. Everybody that is very committed to learn a subject can learn it by itself. But I would suggest people to learn in a study group like that, or in a different way, but never alone. Because when we're studying alone, if we misunderstand something, we will not know that we are missing something. Because quite often, if I give you a sentence and ask you all to give your interpretation, I can guarantee that how many people we have here today? We have 19 people here. I will have at least 10 different interpretations of the same sentence. Because we see things the way we want, the way we see fit in our lives, or the way I want things to be, because it's easier to me to understand or even to adapt my life to it. So it's very beneficial to study in a group. Don't need to be a large group. 3, 4 people, even less, 2 people is better than 1, because then you have to practice questions, answers. If you don't know, go on the internet, try to find something that brings more sense to it. So ideally, a study group is the best as far as I can tell. Item 19. It is generally believed that in order to be convincing, it is enough to simply present the facts. This would certainly appear to be the most logical approach, though experience was shown that it is not always the best, because we frequently encounter individuals who are not at all convinced by the most obvious facts. Something came to my mind now. We still have people saying that they believe the earth is flat. How is that possible? Don't we have enough proof that the earth is not flat? I saw a person that was familiar with flying from one continent to other, saying that the earth was flat. How is that possible? If I'm in the middle of town, I never moved from my neighborhood anywhere else, yeah, okay, fair enough. But if I'm used to get a plane, an aircraft from a continent, cross the Atlantic, land in the other continent, and this very same person tells me that believes the earth is flat, I have a problem, because I'm not going to waste my time discussing that matter. No point. What I'm going to say? And what Kardec is telling here is that at his time, we had lots of phenomena like table turnings, levitating, mediums levitating, materializations, things that you can touch and see. And there was not enough to convince. That's why I like to say that I don't want to convince anyone, because it ain't worth it the time. Why is this? That is what we shall try to determine. In Spiritism, the matter of spirits is secondary to the successive. It is not the starting point, and this is precisely an error into which one falls, and often the reason for one's failure with certain people. Since spirits are simply human souls, the correct starting point is therefore the existence of soul that we already discussed here in the beginning. How could materialists accept the existence of beings that lived outside the material world when they believe themselves to be only matter? It is a non-starter. If they don't believe everything is matter, there is nothing else. How could they believe that they are spirits all around them if they do not believe there is one within themselves? What is making your physical body talk, eat, walk? You know, what is there? It's just material. So it would be pointless to amass the most tangible proofs right in front of them. They would contest all of them because they do not believe in the principle. They do not believe in the principle. But funny enough is that they don't have to believe. But if they don't believe, they are yet to produce the proof of what makes a human talk, walk, eat, drink, have desires. Love. How can I say that love is something material? It's just a chemical reaction. Maybe. I'll let them to prove. Every teaching methodology must proceed from the known to the unknown. From the materialist, the known is matter. Thus, before anything else, you should start with matter and try to show and convince them that there is something within them that is outside the law of matter. How can I convince them there is something inside ourselves? Can I prove? Can I wait? Can I take a picture? You know? So, thus, before anything else, doesn't matter, try to convince something. In a word, before trying to make them spiritists, try to make them spiritualists. Would that be easier? Not sure. To do so, however, you need another order of facts, and you must proceed to a special form of teaching via other means. If you talk to them about spirits before they are even convinced that they possess a soul, you are starting at the end point, since they cannot accept the conclusion if they have not accepted the premise. Therefore, before trying to convince disbelievers, even by using facts, it is advisable to make sure their opinion concerning the soul. That is determine if they believe that it exists, that it survives the body and retains its individuality after death. If their response is negative, it will be a waste of time to talk to them about spirits. That's the rule. I will highlight that here. We are not saying there are no exceptions, but if there are exceptions, there would have to be some other reason for those particular persons to be less resistant. When I'm talking about that here, something came to my mind. I have friends from different creed, and quite often they would like to have a go with me. Hi, Elsa, go on.
Just a quick, when it says here, if you talk to them about spirits before they are convinced that they possess a soul, this is a wise Kardec teaching us how really to respect in advance and find the way to know a little bit more about the person or the public or the class or the whatever you are giving a talk. That is the great things, because if you're starting without knowing that the public has a mixed thoughts and starting guessing only they are already accepting spirit and life goes on, is a waste of time for one entire lecture. But when you really starting making them understand that they are first spirit, incarnated in a body, that means they have a soul, and this is a starting point. That is always a wonderful way to do classes or courses or etc. And Kardec is a wise person. Every time that I read a paragraph, I put myself in my knees and say, thanks God for that.
Very good. Very good. And to people that are used to do lectures, it's very easy to see in people's face if they believe or not, because we change our face straight away when we don't believe in something or when we don't agree with something. So, yep, very good point. Very good point. We must distinguish between two classes of materialists. The first class are those who are theoretical materialists. There is no doubt in them, but rather absolute denial, arrived at through their own reasoning. In their view, humans are nothing more than a machine that functions while assembled, and which breaks down and leaves only a skeleton at death. Their number is happily quite restricted, and they do not represent an openly declared school of thought. We do not need to point out the deplorable effects that would result for social order if some such a doctrine were popularized. We have dealt with this matter quite sufficiently in the Spirit's book. And then we have to think here, if there is nothing else after. Elsa, do you have your hand raised or? No, okay. We have to remember that if we all think nothing is left, why I need to work hard? Why I need to do good? Why I need to help people? Because on the end of my time, that's it. Nothing is left. As he said here, just my bones. And imagine the catastrophe on Earth if everyone thinks like that. Hi, Christine.
Hi. Just saying that it's the theoretical materialists is just their belief. Sometimes it's their education. I used to nurse, and we talked about matter and cells, and the body moved in this way because of this action, and basically that's it. When you die, your bones, that's all that's left. So, but as I said, in Australia, we're not as advanced with Spiritism like we are or Spiritism is in other countries, because I dare say it, but in Australia, we're ignorant of this doctrine.
I see your point, Christine, but in the same classroom where 20 kids are taught science, cells, matter, things like that, not all of them become materialists. So the basis of the education is not what changed what we believe, in my perception. The base of education gives us material to decide by ourselves in what we want to believe and become. So the materialists become materialists because they don't see anything else beyond that. But not everyone is materialist. Not everyone. And everyone is exposed. Doesn't matter where, each country is exposed plus or minus to the same level of knowledge or science, of education, history, blah, blah, blah. So I hear what you're saying, but I think it's a bit more than that. When we stated that disbelievers stop doubting when faced with a rational explanation, we must make an exception of radical materialists who deny every power and any intelligent principle apart from matter. Most of them hold to the opinion out of pride, and believe that they must maintain it out of self-respect. They persist in it in spite of all evidence to the contrary, because they do not want to lose face. Nothing can be done with people like this. No one should be fooled by their false expression of sincerity when they say, "Show me and I will believe it." Then again, there are those who are most honest, who bluntly say, "Even if you show me, I won't believe it." I think that we all have to be prepared. I'm not talking about the materialist, I talk about everyone. We have to be prepared to accept that we don't have all the knowledge about everything. And if something is presented to us that may change, complete what we think, we need to be open to this. If we have what we have today, it's because our predecessors, they were able to move on, to learn different things. Otherwise, we would be everyone in the Stone Age. Because people were able to see things different, and they were prepared to analyze things in a different way. We have computer, we have Zoom, we have all bells and whistles we have today. So I hope we all keep that characteristics from our predecessors, ancestors, to keep an open mind. Even the Spiritists, they should keep an open mind, because Kardec told us to. Kardec told us that Spiritism will evolve. Otherwise, it will be another creed that was cast in stone and remain talking about things like 3,000 years ago. And sincerely, they do not make sense at all in front of the current science we have. An example, how can I justify Adam and Eve nowadays? It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. If someone really believes in that today. So it's complicated. It's really complicated. I'm not having a go at any other belief. I'm just using an example, by the way. The second class of materialists, which is much more numerous than the first class, since materialism is a natural sentiment, includes those who are such out of indifference and might add out of lack of something better. These have not deliberately chosen materialism, and their greatest desire is to believe, for they are tormented by uncertainty. They feel a vague aspiration about the future, but this future has been presented to them in a light that their reason cannot accept. Hence, they doubt and therefore disbelieve. For them, disbelief is not based on any kind of theory. As soon as you present them with something rational, they will eagerly accept it. They are capable of understanding us, since they are closer to us than they might suppose. Even the first group do not talk about revelation or angels or heaven, because they will not understand you. Instead, place yourselves on their own turf and prove to them, first of all, that the laws of physiology are powerless to explain everything. The rest will follow later. When we are in an open, positive conversation, I would say that yes, let's talk about it. trying to convince me that I'm wrong, trying to show me how it's not possible according to what you believe. But if you feel like that conversation is just to waste time or you're not going to gain anything from it, my suggestion is that don't waste your time with that. The situation is otherwise when disbelief is not preconceived, because in that case, belief is not completely non-existent. Rather, it remains a latent sprout that has been cooked by weeds, choked by weeds, sorry, but which a spark can bring back to life. These individuals are like blind persons who have received their sight and are happily at seeing at the light. Or like a shipwreck victim who has been tossed a life preserver. Sometimes our intent to make them see things in a different way could be positive, but depends, as Kardec said, it's case by case, right? When you see someone approaching you, really trying to understand because something is missing, that's fine. If not, consider if that's positive or not. Alongside the materialists per se, there is a third class of disbelievers who, although they are at least spiritualists in name, are no less resistant towards Spiritism. These are ill-will disbelievers. They would feel annoyed if they had to believe because they feel that it would interfere with their tranquility in the materialistic pleasures. Let me see here. Okay, I'll finish here and then I'll make a comment. They are afraid that their ambitions might be condemned along with their selfishness and their human vanities they love to indulge when. They shut their eyes in order not to see, and they plug their ears in order not to hear. We can only pity them. There's a lot of spiritists that falls exactly into that classification. Despite the Kardec saying that's a third class of materialists, we see quite often spiritists that like to go to lectures, read the books. There's no harm doing that. But when come a time when they need to make a decision, they don't want to, because the way of life is better as it is. If I come to you now and say that you all should not drink to be drunk in the streets anymore, go to the pub, for example, in UK, there's a lot of pubs. You should not go to the pub and drink 10 pints anymore. Good for you, drink 1, 2, but not 10, because 10, you have a hard time to go back home. But I love to do that. I love to do that. I cannot leave the pub before I have at least 12 pints. So then I compare what I like, what I love, with what the Spiritism is telling me. And well, I will stick to my 12 pints. I know it's better for me, the Spiritism, but I cannot leave my pints. They are part of me.
Vicious.
I'm just giving an example, like could be giving anything else. And there's a lot of people like that in the Spiritism. We give instructions to people, we give suggestions to people, because Spiritism does not determine what we have to do or not. Spiritism brings to us a level of information to allow us to choose by ourselves what we should do or what not. Just a minute, Christine. Christine, I'll ask you. I'm having a hard time to follow you extend your hand, but whenever you want to talk, just talk, okay? Because it will be easier to me. But let me finish what I was trying to say first. So we give people a bunch of information. Practice the gospel at home. Have a serious study, because that will bring you knowledge you require to do something. You know, you used to do that kind of thing, but it's better that if you don't, because that will bring you harm to your physical body. And that could be anything. You think of an example you decide to. And the person sometimes think, well, it's too hard to be a spiritist. I don't want to be like that, you know. I want to stick to what I know. I want to stick to what pleases me. So be it. So be it. So, hi, Christine, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Gil, and perhaps you've just answered what I was going to suggest or say, is that it's conditioning, and people are conditioned a certain way. And if they're not exposed, or this is what I see, if they're not exposed to any other way, they're conditioned to remain that way. And they may, as Kardec says, that they're a materialist, but they're also a spiritualist, because they want the best of both worlds.
And that is impossible. We cannot have both. The best of both worlds is impossible. It's impossible. And giving an example, I need to keep an eye on time. As I spoke about beer, like I'll keep with that topic, but I could be using any other topic, right? Quite often people that have alcohol problems come to the Spiritist Center because they believe that they need assistance. And someone told them they have spirits around them, make their life more complicated. So they knock on the Spiritist Center trying to get rid of the problem. Lots of people like that. And it is our obligation to try to help them. We see like that. It's our obligation to try to help them. We tell them why that's happening. What are the possibilities to overcome that situation? Some of them are really so deep in the problem that we call that an obsession case. Because when we are doing things like they are not positive to us, quite often we are not alone. Quite often we have spirits that are happy with that, just next to us. And we try to give them all we have to make their life easier. And that period of time where they committed themselves to get rid of what is bothering them, some people are even following all the instructions. But as soon as they feel like, I'm okay again, they stop. A week, a month, 2 months later, the person's coming back. Well, I'm having problem again. Yeah, let's talk. Are you doing this? No. Have you returned to do this? Yes. Okay. And what else? Tell me. Well, I'm feeling that again. What do you think? Well, I'll tell you even more. Sometimes, depending on the situation, we even ask the benefactors of the institution for the guidance of what to do in some cases. And I saw by myself, in more than once, even the benefactors, after the third, the fourth time, the person comes asking for help and return to do exactly the same he or she used to do. Even the benefactors, we told that person again, we told that person a few times already what he or she needs to do. It's beyond our control. We cannot do anything to help them because they have the free will to stop, but they don't. And this happens a lot with the Spiritists as well. The Spiritists, they read, they understand the instructions, they even accept what's good for themselves, but lack commitment. So we can only help people who want to be helped at the end of the day. Doesn't matter the creed, where they are, where they're from. We can only help who want to be helped. And I will stop my talking here. I'm talking too much. It's almost time. Almost time.